Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carrie, and today I am doing my February wrap-up. Yes, I know, I'm late again. I'm sorry. So I am going to go ahead and just do this in order of the books as I read them. I just don't have time to go in and organize it any other way, so we're just going to do what we're going to do. So the very first book that I read in February was Desperate Measures. This is by Katie Robert, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. It is a Jasmine and Jafar retelling, and it was really quite interesting. I enjoyed it. Uh, it did kind of mess with me having their actual names be Jasmine and Jafar. I don't know why. I just kept like picturing the Disney characters. I'm not used to Disney retellings, and I think that's why. But I did really enjoy it. I actually really loved the ending of it. I did not expect it, and the fact that Jasmine went from being a victim to being this queen just totally made me happy. I really, really enjoyed this book. Gave it 4.5 stars. The next book that I read is Tempt Me. This is by Kelly Ash, and I gave this book 3 stars. It was insta-lovey. It is a nanny romance. Y'all know I've been on a nanny romance kick lately, but I like a nanny romance where there's a little bit of build-up, right? It's a little slow burn. There's a little tension between the two. Usually there's, either an age gap or like that's my kind of nanny romance. This was a nanny romance where they instantly felt a connection and they kind of like, I don't know, it was just super insta-lovey. Just super insta-lovey. So, yeah, it wasn't my favorite at all. I wouldn't recommend it. So the next book that I read was The Free. This is by Kay Webster. It is the second part. It is a duet to The Wild. And so I don't want to give a lot away because it is about 2 characters that are in the first book, Atticus and Eve. Eve is a very young girl. She is what everybody believes to maybe be around 16. She is very much so wild. She was raised out in the wild. She was raised by her father and I think like 4 brothers who are all inbred, nasty people. If you've read the first book, then you know who Eve is. She was the young girl. She's been put through the ringer. And Atticus is this guy who is so sweet and just wants to protect her and help her. But I was just expecting an age gap, y'all, and I was not prepared for what I read in this book. It shocked me. I literally was laughing out loud. I was gasping out loud. Like I was totally shocked because I just didn't see it coming. Like I said, I went into this book completely blind. I had no idea what I was getting into whenever I read it, and I fell in love. But this book is not for everybody. It is extremely forbidden, extremely, extremely taboo. Trigger warnings for rape, for miscarriage, for incest, for what else? I mean, literally, majority of the triggers you could imagine being in a book like this is probably going to be in this book. It is very, very dark, but yeah, if you are into that kind of thing, you're going to love this one just as much as you're going to love The Wild. I gave it 5 stars. Absolutely adored this book, but it's not for everybody. The next 3 books that I have to talk about is going to be a trilogy, and it is The Initiation, The Obsession, and The Deception, all by Nikki Sloan. So this was recently became super popular on BookTube. I remember Bree from In Love and Words was gushing about this book, and I was just like, okay, I've got to read it. I've got to read it. And so I picked it up and I read them, and they are definitely interesting. There's big time shock factors in these books. Like that is the biggest value in this series, in my opinion, is the amount of shock factors. There's lots of twists and turns. However, one little thing I have to nitpick about is that I personally didn't really see this as a dark romance. I felt like it wasn't really a romance at all. I felt it was more of a thriller or a horror novel than I felt like it was a dark romance. And maybe that's just because I don't read a ton of dark romance, but I just felt like there was a lot more of deception and shock, and like it gave me more thriller vibes than anything else. So I don't really want to give much away. I am going to just say that this is about a wealthy society. There is a CEO of a big banking company. I mean, extremely, extremely wealthy. So the initiation is about this girl and her sister. They were raised and bred in this kind of household where they are part of high society. And her sister has always known that she is going to marry the son of this CEO. And so it's basically been her entire life. She knows that she's going to marry this guy. But her sister has this connection with him, and her sister really likes him. And so it starts out with her going to this high society party, and it's for the son. He graduated from college or something. And so she's at this party, and they have some alone time, and he basically asks her to wait for him. And so it's a year later, she has waited for him, and now all of a sudden he is going to her house for dinner, her and her father, and it's an announcement of his engagement to her sister. And so you have all of this like intrigue and frustration right from the very get-go. Like that's just in the first couple of chapters of this book. It is a love story kind of between her and this guy, but he is doing everything in his power to hurt his father. She has to go through an initiation of sorts, and it is, in my opinion, rape. She can't give consent. I mean, it's all about, oh, you're consenting to this, but if you don't consent to this, then your family loses everything and they're out on the streets and you're out on the streets. So you're consenting, but you're not, I mean, what choice do you have? So yeah, that happens in this book. It ends on a crazy cliffhanger. There's obsession with this girl from a couple of different people, and it's very intriguing. I would recommend it, but just go in knowing that it is thriller / horror vibes as much as it is any kind of romance. And in fact, I wouldn't really call this a romance. Is there a small romance in it? Yes, but it's not like, if you're going for the happily ever after, you're not really gonna find it all that satisfying. The next book that I read is Just a Bit Confusing by Alessandra Hazard. This is book number 5. Yes, book number 5 in her Straight Guys series. Once again, this is another Gay for You book. So this is about James and Ryan. And y'all, this book kind of gave me Jamie and Wes vibes. But if instead of Jamie becoming bisexual and like him and Wes just having this amazing love story, picture if Jamie was straight, like 100% straight, but loved his best friend so much that he came around to being okay with being with him. Like, it's complete unrequited love. Straight up, like, he loves his best friend so much that whenever he finds out that his best friend is in love with him, even though he doesn't have sexual feelings for him, like, he doesn't want to let him go. He will leave any girl to be with him because that is his best friend. Like, that is his soulmate. But his soulmate was born in a guy's body, and he's not sexually attracted to him for a very, very long time, but he is doing certain things to help his friend. Like, I don't know how to explain this book without giving major spoilers away, but it's completely unrequited love, and it turns into a love story, and it is just beautiful, but super unrealistic. Would never happen in real life, but just so good and smutty. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. there was a couple of scenes that I was just like, eh. But, I mean, it's gay for you. What do you expect? The next book that I finished was How to Save a Life by P. D'Angelico. This is her newest release. It just came out in February and I loved it. It is a nanny romance, kind of, sort of. It is about Jordan and Riley. So this book is a kind of like a rich guy meets poor girl. Poor girl saves rich guy in a way, and then it's very complicated because it's not his kid, but she is hired to basically essentially be a nanny for him, and she falls in love with the kid and she falls in love with him. And this is a hero who knows how to grovel, in my opinion. Like, I love this book so much. It is slow burn and tension that just leaps off the page, which P. D'Angelico, in my opinion, should be known for. Her books are up there in like my favorite slow burns of all time. She is just known for like this sexual tension that just jumps. I mean, it's just, oh, it's electric, and I love it. And I love this author. She's one of my all-time favorites now. The next book is Alpha by Jacinda Wilder. I've been wanting to read this book for years. I've seen this cover around for a very long time, and I've been wanting to read it, and I finally did, and I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. It was kind of weird. It was almost a Cinderella retelling, in my opinion. So this girl, it's another like super poor girl meets super rich guy. So this girl is very, very much so struggling. Her father has passed away. Her mom is mentally ill, and her brother's away at college. She's trying to pay for her brother to go to college while working temp jobs, and is trying to just keep her head above water, like is starving herself to death. She's in a pretty rough situation. And her boss at her temp job has just propositioned her or fired her. Basically let her choose, and so that's how it starts out, and it's kind of crazy. But she's fired from her job, and she gets home and she looks in the mail, and there's a check for $10,000 or something like that. I think it's 10,000. And she's getting a check every single month for $10,000, and it says something like, "You are mine." Like on each check, like it's written out like "you" on the first check, and then it says "are" and then "mine." And she's like, oh shit, what did I just get myself into? But she's desperate for money, so she keeps cashing the checks. And at the end of 1 year, after she has accrued $120,000 or something like that, then he comes for her. And he like keeps her blindfolded the whole time, and it's this consensual thing, but it turns into kind of a Cinderella poor girl meets wealthy, gorgeous man. Never gonna happen in real life. Like, this story is so beyond realistic. But it was good. That part of it was good. It did have a very, and the reason why I gave it 3 stars was because, one, it had a very typical trope plot twist, if you want to call it. I saw it a mile away, and the drama and the typical like 80% angst or whatever happens, and it was just so ridiculously common for this trope that I was just like, this is not, there's nothing suspenseful, there's nothing, no kind of crazy reveals. Like, it's just very typical for this trope. Also, the biggest pet peeve of mine happened in this book, and that is the overuse of something. So, like, I hate whenever somebody overuses pet names or overuses a certain word over and over and over again in a book, and this happened in this book. So, the hero called the heroine by her name 380 times. And yes, I actually looked it up on my Kindle to see how many times it happened, and it was 380 times in the span of one book. Like, he called her by her name, and it was to the point where it was happening like 2 to 3 times on each page, and it was just so overused that it became ridiculous. And I didn't like that. So that's the reason why I gave it a lower star. It was a decent book. It wasn't my favorite thing. I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. But that part of it was super annoying. The next book I read is My Dad's Best Friend. This is by Katie Robert. This was a very short novella. It's about Jonas and Blake, and it wasn't as taboo as I was hoping for. So these books are all very typically taboo, down and dirty novellas where it's just smut. And the smut was there, but I was really hoping for a little more of the taboo side of it. And like, the father never even came into the picture. So there wasn't any conflict. There wasn't any like taboo-ness to it. It was just two people getting it on. And it was sexy, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't connect with the characters as much as I did in like Gifting Me to His Best Friend. That one. I didn't connect with it like I did that book. It just was okay in my opinion. I gave it 4 stars. It was good, but I mean, it's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, it's smutty, but it's not taboo. The next book I read was Havoc. This is book number 2 in Deborah Anastasia's series. The first book is Mercy, and that is about a guy who is literally tattooed like a skeleton. Like his entire body is tattooed as a skeleton. And he is a assassin, and he is also obsessed and in love with this girl from his childhood who saved his life, and she had no idea that she saved his life from his father. And these books are dark. They are somewhat new adult, but they're just kind of, they have a different vibe to them. They're super moody and dark. Halloween reads for sure. Like, it just gives me Halloween vibes. And I loved this whole series. By the way, I've read all 3 of them. But anyway, Havoc is the second book. This is about Animal and T. And it is also a childhood best friends to lovers situation. They are both badasses. So Animal is Mercy's best friend. They live together. They're best friends. They do everything together, and they're family. And so Animal is kind of going through something. He ends up finding T, who is his best friend in childhood whenever they were both in the foster system. She was homeless. He was not homeless, but was in a really bad situation. And it's their relationship. I don't really want to give too much away because spoilers are at every turn. This book is full of twists and turns. It was my least favorite of the 3 books for one reason alone, and that is he was a player who did not realize he was in love with this girl until towards the end of the book, and he was actively sleeping with other women. She had to see that, and it had active like sex scenes involving other women, and I'm just not there for that. I like it whenever the hero knows that he's in love with the heroine and he goes after that girl like she is his last breath, right? So I don't really like it whenever the guy's like a playboy and is like actively a playboy in the series and you actually have to see that. I'm just not a fan of that. That happened in this book. I still gave it 4 stars. I loved the actual action and all of the stuff surrounding this book, because they are, I mean, they're good bad guys, right? They are assassins, but they go after these really bad people, and it's just really fascinating. I love Deborah Anastasia's writing. If you haven't read anything by her, I highly recommend you start with Mercy. The next book I read is A Nordic King. This is by Karina Hawley, and I gave this one 4 stars. It was really good. It is a royalty romance. It is a nanny romance, and it's an age gap grumpy hero romance as well. So it has basically everything I like. I gave it 4 stars for one reason and one reason alone, and that was this book went on way too long. So it had really good sexual tension. It was a slow burn romance, really grumpy hero. I loved almost everything about this book. But Karina Hawley's writing, like, the book was longer than it should have been. There was descriptions of things that just didn't really matter, and then the happily ever after ending epilogue just seemed like it went on forever, and I got so bored with it. But the actual relationship with this king and this girl who is from a different country, she's from Australia, who was being a nanny in Paris and is now in, I even forgot the country. Anyway, she's now in another country, and so she's having to learn all the customs, and then she's this nanny for this rich guy whose wife died, and then he's got 2 little girls, and the little girls are so adorable, and they even have a pet pig named Snarf Snarf. So, like, how cute is that? I loved this book. Really, I did. It just, there's moments that it got a little slow and went on a little too long, but I highly recommend it. The next book I have to talk about is Unconditional. This is by QB Tyler, and y'all gave this book 5 stars. It is good. It is taboo. It is smutty. It is perfection, in my opinion. Like, whew, this is my kind of book. This is what I love. This is my bread and butter. This is it. If there was anything that I would be like, yes, like, give me all of this book, it would be this. This is very, very close to the wild, in my opinion. So this guy is a police officer. He's a rookie cop, and he's on the scene of a crazy crime in which it is a murder-suicide. And he goes upstairs and he finds this 7-year-old girl who's upstairs who happened to be a witness to all of the craziness that was her mother and father. And she latches on to this guy. There's something about him that she just feels safe with. And so she latches on to him, and she doesn't want to go to anybody else. And then it fast forwards, and it's 10 years later. She's 17. He has been raising her, basically. They live together. She doesn't ever call him dad. Like, she never sees him as a father figure. And she has a huge crush on him. And he is, like, trying to stop that. He's, like, going on dates. He's doing his own thing. Like, he doesn't want to encourage it, but it just kind of sort of happens still, and he can't resist her. Like, he finds her beautiful, and they never really saw each other as daughter father, but they just kind of viewed each other. But it just feels kind of wrong, right? Because he is a guardian to her. She's 17. She's living in his house, and his mother is involved, the family's involved, and the family is not okay with it at all. Not even a little bit. His sister-in-law has been raising him and is like a mom figure. She actually calls her mom, and she is so not okay with it. And so and unlike Love Unexpected, if you've read that by QB Tyler, I gave that one 4 stars because I felt like you didn't get the angst and the drama of the family really getting to know, and so you didn't really get the forbiddenness of that part, whereas this book is perfection because you get all of that. You get the drama of the family finding out, and it is just, it's really good. It's really good. The next book that I have to talk about is Little Dove. This is by Layla Frost. And Heather, I finally read it. I enjoyed it immensely. I gave it 4 stars. It was really good. It's a daddy kink, age gap, slight mafia vibes in a way. And it just kind of had, it was dark. It had some BDSM elements. It was also kind of a Cinderella retelling, but like a super dark Cinderella retelling, because she's this young 17-year-old girl who has this horrible, abusive father in a way, and this guy comes in and basically rescues her. Like, he has either the chance to kill her or rescue her and save her, and he rescues her, and he lets her live with him, but he kind of keeps her guarded, and it's cute. There was moments where it moved a tiny bit slow for me. That's why I gave it 4 stars. I was just kind of wanting the pace to pick up just a tiny bit, but I still really, really love this one. Gave it 4 stars. The next book I have to talk about is Dating Games. This is by T.K. Lee. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So it has a lot of typical tropes, but it just really worked for me. So this is about a girl who is 30 years old, and on her 30th birthday, she is dumped by her longtime boyfriend. They've been together for like 7 years, and she thought she was getting proposed to, and he ends up dumping her. She met her boyfriend whenever they were in college, and she basically put aside her dreams to support his, and so she's devastated whenever he dumps her. And she gets drunk and goes into this bar on her 30th birthday and like basically tells her whole story to the entire bar there. And this guy happens to see her, and they keep running into each other, right? So they have this one night where he takes her home. She's super drunk, and she wakes up in his bed and she's like, oh shit, what happened? She ends up continuing to run into this guy. She's working for the magazine. There's this mystery plot line, which I figured out early on, but I kept questioning. Am I right about this? Is this what's happening? So it has this like mystery. Anyway, it ends up being a fake dating trope. And the fake dating, of course, eventually turns into real dating. And it's just really cute. I know it's not making a lot of sense. This book, I don't want to give anything away, but I recommend it. There was a couple of moments that were a little cheesy to me, especially in the bar, like whenever she was giving her monologue about how she was dumped and stuff. Like, it just went on a little too long for me. It got a little but I still really enjoyed this book, and I'd recommend it. The next book I have to talk about is Able. This is by Katie Robert. This is one of her newer books. So this one is a bit odd. It is a fantasy romance. I don't really know how to explain it. It's about these 7 brothers, I think, that are 5 or 7 brothers. I don't know. It's about a group of brothers that are in this, it's like a fantasy world where it's like these 7 groups of people who have certain powers or something. It's super hard to explain. This book is interesting. It is a male-female romance. It is about Abel, Harlow, and Eli. So Abel is the oldest brother who was basically forced out. His father was this head honcho who was like basically like a little mini president of like this certain sect of people. There's like 7 different groups, and I think it's 7 groups. And then out of those 7 people, each one has like a head honcho. So his father was like that head honcho, but he was a bad guy. And so this group of people overcame them, ended up killing his father, and then they made all of the brothers disappear because they were going to try to kill them too. So now he's been gone for several years. Him and his brothers, they've survived off the land. They've grown their own following, and now they're back. And they're back during this time where it's called a trial period, or some kind of a trials, where they were able to basically, it's almost like going into the ring and fighting, like an MMA fighting thing, but with like these different groups of people. I don't know. This probably doesn't make any sense. But so him and his brothers go back that night, and in front of everybody, they say that they want him, just Abel, to fight one of each of these 7 groups. And if they win, then they get a bride of their choosing. And so that's how the story starts out. He ends up getting 2 brides. He gets both Eli, who is his best friend, who he believes has completely screwed him over, and he gets Harlow, who is his best friend's girl, and he gets them both for himself. So it ends up being a male-female romance. There was so many side characters and so much going on in such a short amount of time that I became very, very confused. I gave it 3.5 stars because of that. There was just so many side characters, and you had so many different people's names and stuff to remember that it just became over the top confusing. But it was still good. It had some really hot moments. I would recommend it. I'm definitely planning on reading the second book, but I hope that she kind of slows it down a little bit and like really lets us get to know these other characters, because there's just so many. There's like 7 brothers, and all 7 of those brothers have a wife now, whether it be a man or woman. They picked both. So you've got a lot going on. The next book I read is Rhapsodic. This is by Laura Thalassis. So this is also kind of a fantasy romance. It is about the Fae. And so this girl has a power. She's a siren. So it's a siren and a Fae who get together. But when she was very young, her father, or her stepfather, was abusive and physically and especially sexually abusive to her. And she kills him. And she calls on the bargainer. She doesn't know who the bargainer is, but she's heard of him. And so she calls on him to help her dispose of her father's body, basically. This is at the very beginning of the book. I'm not really giving anything away. But that's how she meets the bargainer, who ends up being a prince of the Fae. And it is their relationship. It is also a second chance romance, because they met way before, and now it's 7 years later and he's back and he needs her help because there are women in his land that are coming back pregnant and comatose. And there's a whole bunch of women and he doesn't know what's happening to them. And so he is asking her for her help as a siren to be able to get to the bottom of who this person is that's coming in, stealing his women and making them comatose and pregnant. And it is super interesting. I gave this book 4 stars. Yes, I gave it 4 stars. It is a little too slow burn for my opinion. I needed a little more sexy times. This book is a very, very slow burn, but it's really good and I would recommend. The next book I read is Come What May. This is by L.K. Farlow. This was the first book I'd read by this author. It was good. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't quite connect with the characters like I was hoping to. This cover is just gorgeous. I was really, really hoping to like this book a little more than I did. It is about a girl, big trigger warnings for loss of a father. If that is a trigger for you, I would recommend not reading it. It got to me a little. So this girl loses her father has, I think, cancer, and he chooses to commit suicide instead of going on in his pain. And so here she is. She's 18 years old. She's left on her own, doesn't really know how to survive. He was her only parental figure, and she basically loses it. She's full on in her grief, and his best friend, her father was a mechanic, and his best friend, one of them, has decided to pull her out of her funk and is trying to help her, and enter in Mateo. And it's a father's best friend romance, but really there's no taboo or any kind of aspect really, because the father, of course, is gone, so he doesn't find out. He does have a teenage daughter. There is a decent age gap romance in there. It was cute. Like I said, I didn't quite... this book is very emotional, but I didn't connect with the characters, so it just didn't... Like, you almost have to connect with these characters on a deep level for it to be emotional and what the author was really meaning for it to be. It did make me hungry, though, because Mateo is Hispanic, and he keeps making Mexican food that just sounded so good. So if you want a book that's like gonna make you hungry, read that one. But once again, I did not connect with these characters, and so I just didn't feel that emotional pull that I should have felt in this book, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book I have to talk about is A Girl Worth Fighting For. This is by K.L. Dawn. I have heard of this author. It had a 4.11 rating on Goodreads. It was a short novella, and it was a nanny romance. And I'm just like, this has everything I want. High rating. I fully expected to like this book, and I gave it 2 stars. I hated it. I hated it. It was insta-love. And like, there was insta-love, and then there's this book. It's so beyond insta-love that it was just disgusting. it was a nanny romance. It is an asshole hero. So he is the single father of 2 children, 3 children, 2, I think 2 children, yes. He's a single father of 2 children. He's got a boy and then a girl, and his ex-wife basically, like, they had a kid together and then she left him, and then she comes back and asks for him back, and he accepts her, and then they have another kid, and then she turns around and leaves him again. So he's been jaded twice, and he's turned into an asshole, and he needs a nanny who's going to take care of his kids because he's a successful mechanic and he needs it. And it's very much so insta love, but he's a real asshole to her, like a serious asshole to her. And then it's crazy amount of insta love, and I just did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. The last book that I have to talk about is going to be Locke. This is by Deborah Anastasia. This is the 3rd book in her series, and I adored this one. So this is about Mercy's sister Ember and Locke. This one was right up there with Mercy. I love the series so much. So Ember has been kind of sheltered. She didn't really know Mercy growing up. I don't really want to give spoilers away, but it's his little sister. He keeps her on lockdown. Some things are going on with Mercy and his crew, and this madman finds out that Ember is Mercy's sister. She's away at college. She's wanting her space, and so Mercy has given it to her, but he has like guys on the lookout and stuff. Anyway, this guy gets a hold of Ember and is basically forcing her to be part of this group, and it's like this forced arranged marriage kind of thing. She met Locke while she was in college and has this connection with him, and he's kind of a bad guy. He's young and his father is in prison. He's got a sister who has some kind of illness, like cerebral palsy maybe, or anyway, she has some kind of a disease that has her mental state as a very young age, and is, I think, like in a wheelchair or something. She has some mental issues and physical issues, and it's expensive. And his mom is doing the best she can, but they're living in this poor part of town, and so he joins a gang and he meets Ember, and their connection is very strong from the get-go. You fall in love with them. He ends up getting to be a part of this guy who is forcing her to be in an arranged marriage, and he ends up saving Ember, and it's their love story. I'm probably not making a lot of sense, but there's a lot of spoilers. Like, you need to read the series in order. So if this sounds at all interesting to you, if the series at all sounds interesting to you, please start with Mercy. It is so good. Definitely a little bit of a dark romance. If you're into new adult, like, it's good. I really, really loved it. I gave 5 stars to Mercy, gave 5 stars to this book, gave 4 stars to Havoc. I loved the entire series. Highly, highly recommend this one. Alright, so that is it. That is my February wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you on the next one.